Hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible. Verse by verse, a plain and simple study of the entire Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. All right, we're going to try to get through 2 Kings chapter 6 and 7. It's sort of one story, but yeah, it's going to make for a long chapter. I'm going to jump right in it. More of Elisha, the prophet, and his exploits. All right, here we go. First one says, the son of the prophet said to Elijah, please notice that the place where we live under your supervision is too small for us. Please let us go to the Jordan where we can each get a log and we can build ourselves a place to live. Go, he said. Now, before I go on, here's the very interesting thing about this. When you look at these kinds of ministries, notice the schools of the prophets. And notice Elijah had one where he mentored, trained other prophets in the way of the Lord. They then would be used by God as prophets. Now, that's the difference. But you also would note that they would oftentimes, this was their occupation or school or trade, as you were. And you notice that these schools of the prophet were versatile. Not so it wasn't that they just, kind of prayed all day and studied all day. That notice they were skilled. I say that because we see some of this in today's society. For example, monks, priests. There was a time when priests, for example, / monks, not only were they serving in the ministry, but they also would have different trades. Now, if you go back, the same thing, the priests of the Old Testament, these were prophets, but the priests of the Old Testament, remember, they took care of every aspect of the temple, of the tabernacle before them, every aspect. So they made the repairs. If there was to be any building, it was the priests who did it. We kind of see that here. Not too far from where I live at in one of the suburbs, there's an old monastery that I think the city that it's in bought as a park district, but monks built that, and everything from masonry, carpentry, plumbing, all of that, electric. All right. Then one said, please come with your servant, verse 3, and I'll come, he answered. So he went with them, and they came to the Jordan and cut down trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water, and he cried out, oh, my master, it was borrowed. Then the man of God asked, where did it fall? And when he showed him the place, the man of God cut a stick through it there, and made the iron float. And he said, pick it up. So he reached out and he took it. So again, another miracle of Elisha making iron, solid iron, float. That's kind of interesting because probably as soon as he took it out, it returned to its iron mass. Okay, verse 8. Now that would be something for physics to kind of squabble over. How in the world can you make iron float, right? But that's why it's called a miracle. Verse 8. When the king of Aram was waging war against Israel, he conferred with his servants, my camp will be at such and such a place. But the man of God sent a word to the king of Israel, be careful passing by this place, for the Arameans are going down there. Consequently, the king of Israel sent word to that place and that the man of God had told him about. And the man of God repeatedly warned the king, so the king would be on his guard. And the king of Aram was enraged because of this matter. And he called the servants and demanded them, tell me which one of us is for the king of Israel. In other words, which one of us is a spy? Now, in the normal circumstances, yes, that exactly would be the case. Verse 12. One of his servants said, no one, my lord the king. Elijah the prophet in Israel tells the king of Israel even the words speaking in your bedroom. So the king said, go and see where he is so I can send men to capture him. When he was told, Elijah is in Dothan, he sent horses, chariots, and a massive army there. And They went by the night and surrounded the city. The servant of the man of God got up early in the morning. Note, this is not Gehazi. Remember, he was fired from his job. When the servant of the man of God got up early and went out, he discovered an army with horses and chariots surrounding the city. So he asked Elijah, "Oh, master, what are we to do?" And Elisha said, "Don't be afraid, for those who are with us outnumber those who are with them." Now this is kind of interesting. Now remember, the servant is kind of looking around like, I only see two of us. And I see this vast army surrounding the entire city here. Verse 17, then Elisha prayed, "Lord, please open his eyes and let him see." So the Lord opened the servant's eyes and looked and saw that the mountains were covered with horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. Now, let me stop, because apparently this army, and I'm going to say this spiritual army, this angelic, whatever it is, spiritual army. Notice, horses, because remember, this is spiritual that he's seeing, covering all around them. And notice this innumerable amount of horses and chariots that he is seeing. Remember, it was a horse and chariot that swooped down and separated Elijah from Elijah and took Elijah up into the heavens. Okay, just a thought. Like I said, we only get a glimpse of this, though. We don't have details. Verse 18. When the Arameans came against him, Elijah prayed to the Lord, "Please strike this nation with blindness." So he struck them with blindness according to Elijah's word. Then Elijah said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will take you to the man you're looking for." And he led them to Samaria. Now, what is interesting about this is that these men who are blind are following this man, right, to try to, in their minds, to try to capture Elijah, but they're blind. Okay, verse 20. When they entered Samaria, Elijah said, "Lord, open these men's eyes and let them see." So the Lord opened their eyes. They looked and discovered they were in Samaria. Now, which means they were in enemy territory. When the king of Israel saw this, he said to Elijah, "My father, should I kill them?" "I will kill them." Elijah replied, "Do not kill them. Do you kill those you have captured with your sword or your bow? Set food and water in front of them so they can eat and drink and go to their masters." Well, this is kind of interesting here, right? Because they were coming to capture Elijah. And eventually they were coming to what? Wage war. But yet Elijah says, "Nah, just feed them and send them on their way." And remember, this is a huge army that was blind. So this in and of itself is kind of miraculous. Verse 23. So he prepared a great feast for them, and when they had eaten and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their masters. And the Arameans raiders did not come into Israel land again. So that would be the moral of that story, if you want to call it that. This is an amazing story here. Verse 24. Sometime later, King Ben-Hadad of Aram brought all his military units together and to march up to besiege Samaria. Now, sidebar note here, a lot of times, despite that being defeated by the armies of God, the prophets of God, notice these things oftentimes were also God's judgment against Israel. End of sidebar. 25. So there was a great famine in Samaria, and they continued the siege against the city until a donkey's head sold for 80 silver shekels, and a cup of dove's dung sold for 5 silver shekels. Now, things were so bad, and this is when we see sometimes on late night infomercials, you know, the famine that they usually show in Africa. But things are so bad. Notice that even dove's poop was sold for expensive amounts of money. Notice that a dove's head, all of this stuff, because the famine was so severe. Verse 26, and as the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried out to him, my lord, the king, help. He answered, if the Lord doesn't help you, where can I get help for you? From the threshing floors of the winepress? Now, kind of interesting that the king would say that, since usually the kings, right, were in rebellion themselves against God. Verse 28. Then the king asked her, what is the matter? She said, this woman said to me, give up your son, and we will eat him today. Then we will eat my son tomorrow. So we bought my son and ate him. And I said to her the next day, give up your son, and we will eat him. But she has hidden her son. Now, yes, there's a couple of things. The famine shows you how bad things were, and worse, how wicked the minds of people were. In other words, the one woman got played because they said, okay, things so bad, we're going to kill your son and eat him. This is not necessarily cannibalism, even though it is, right? The reason why they were doing this, one, because of their corrupt minds, plus the severity of the famine. But the woman had a change of heart and said, no, you ain't going to kill my son after we didn't feast it up. And this woman was like, after we didn't feast it upon your son? But again, I don't know. You can try to see how bad things were during this time. Verse 30, when the king heard the woman's word, he tore his clothes. Then as he was passing by the wall, the people saw that there was sackcloth under his clothes next to his skin. And he announced, may God punish me and do so severely if the head of Elijah, the son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today. Now, I don't know why he's blaming Elisha for this, right? Like, why is he blaming Elijah for the famine? It was their own wickedness. Verse 32, Elijah was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. And the king sent a man ahead of him, but before the messengers got to him, Elijah said to the elders, do you see how this murderer has sent someone to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door to keep him out. Isn't the sound of his master's feet behind him? So Elijah is now being given revelation from God, right? So the problem here, notice this king is so wicked. This is why things are so bad. Now, the king is for some reason blaming Elijah. Now, Elijah was just the messenger, right? Not the cause. It was the wickedness. While Elijah was still speaking with him, the messenger came down. Then he said, this disaster is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer? Well, because things can get worse. That's why. Okay? Things can get way worse. Okay? So chapter 7 and then verse 1 says, here Elijah replied, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow at the gate of Samaria, 6 quarts of fine meal will sell for a shekel, and 12 quarts of barley will sell for a shekel. In other words, it's going to be a reverse. Now, when you think about our markets today, right? And again, I'm no economist, so forgive my poor examples, but it would be like saying that gasoline is $20 a gallon, and then like overnight, gasoline is going to be $2 a gallon. Okay. Verse 13. Then the captain, the king's right hand, responded to the man of God, look, even if the Lord were to make the windows of heaven, in heaven, even if the Lord were to make windows in heaven, could this really happen? Elijah announced, you will in fact see it with your own eyes, but you won't eat any of it. Not a good prophecy. Verse 3. Then says, 4 men with skin disease were at the entrance to the gate. They said to one another, why just sit here until we die? If we say, let us go into the city, we will die there because the famine is in the city. But if we sit here, we will also die. So now, come on, let us go up to the Arameans camps, If they let us live, we live. If they kill us, we die. Right? Logical. Right? In other words, why are we just sitting here to die? we might get some food, perchance. Anyway, verse 5. So the diseased men, or men of leprosy, got up at the twilight to go to the Arameans' camp. When they came to the camp's edge, they discovered that there was not a single man there. Verse 6. So now we're going to get commentary, revelation commentary. For the Lord had caused the Aramean camps to hear a sound of chariots and horses and a great army. And the armies had said to each other, the kings of Israel must have hired the king of the Hittites and the king of Egypt to attack us. So they got up, so they had gotten up and fled at twilight, abandoning their tent, horses, and donkeys. And the camp was intact, and they had fled for their lives. And when the men came to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent to eat and drink. Then they picked up silver and gold and clothing and went off and hid it. They came back and entered another tent, picked up things and hid them. And they said to one another, we are not doing what is right. Today is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning light, our sin will catch up to us. Let us go and tell the king's household. Now, they started plundering the camp. Now, back then when they would go to war, they would bring all of their possessions, the jewels, crowns, whatever. Why they did that, I don't know, but they would bring that. And that's why they were able to plunder this. So they went into one camp, chowed down, ate, took some gold, hid that, came back to some more gold, hand that, and I said, oh, let's go tell the king now, right? He said, this is not right. But this is where the change comes place now. Remember that prophecy. The next day, he says, you're going to see such a reverse where, that the prices will be so reduced. Verse 10, the diseased men went and called the city's gatekeeper and told them, we went to the Arameans' camp and no one was there. No human sound. There was nothing but tethered horses and donkeys, and the tents were intact. The gatekeeper called out, and the news was reported to the king's household. So the king got up in the night and said to the servants, let me tell you what the Arameans have done to us. They know we are starving, so they have left the camp to hide in the open country, thinking when they come out of the city, we will take them alive and go into the city. But one of the servants responded, please let the messengers take 5 of the horses that are left in the city. Their fate is like the entire Israelite community who will die. So let's send them and see. The messengers took the chariots with the horses, and the king sent them after the army, saying, go and see. So they followed them as far as the Jordan, and they said and they saw that the whole way was littered with clothes and equipment the Arameans had thrown off in their haste. So the messengers returned and told the king, and then the people went out and plundered the Arameans' camp. And it was then that 6 quarts of fine meal sold for a shekel of 12 quarts, and a barley sold of a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king had appointed the captain, his right hand man. Remember the one who doubted. And he go, if the Lord was to make windows in heaven, how could this be? So watch what happened. The king had appointed the captain, his right hand man, to be in charge of the gate. But the people trampled him in the gateway, and he died just as the man of God had predicted when the king came in. In other words, the people were so hungry, they stormed past him. And of course, we hear about things like this all the time. When you have large crowds, and then something happens, and then they call it a stampede, and people die because of that. Very dangerous, these large crowds. Verse 18, and when the man of God had said to the king, about this time tomorrow, 12 quarts of barley will be sold for a shekel, and 6 quarts of fine meal will sell for a shekel. The gates at the gates of Samaria. This captain had answered the man of God, look, even if the Lord were to make windows in heaven, could this really happen? Elijah said, you will in fact see it with your own eyes, but you won't eat any of it. And this is what happened to him. The people trampled him in the gateway, and he died. So, kind of a remarkable story here. And I think we should not forget how the wickedness is what's the problem. The wickedness, okay? The wickedness of the cities, okay? All right, guys. Love to hear your comments, your thoughts. Add them to the comment section. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to VP the Bible Perspective. Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, I'll see you in the next study.